I saw something terrifying while hiking rural Appalachia. This story was originally posted in the subreddit No Sleep, and it was posted by Comprehensive End 6058. Let's get into it. For context, I am a professional wilderness explorer. Since I was young, my passion had been geared towards the wilderness. I have hiked on rough terrain in many countries. I know the wilderness like it was my own precious child. I research what specific wildlife lives in the area before I go hiking, so I know what to be prepared for. That's what makes this ordeal even more terrifying. One day, while browsing through a travel site for West Virginia, I saw a pop up for a specific mountain trail. Again, nothing seemed out of the ordinary while researching, and it really seemed like the ideal hiking spot, leading up to a beautiful view showing a gorgeous blue lake. When researching the trail, it was mentioned that the area was very isolated, with the nearest town being 123 miles away. It seemed very enticing. Of course, it had normal flora and fauna of the region, and it didn't seem odd. It did mention not to disturb the wildlife and to watch where you step because of many false footholds that would break away and cause you to fall down the cliffside. Overall, it was just the normal mountain trail. I feel like that's actually fairly common when you're going like hiking on like nature trails and stuff like that to see signs like that. Especially in like wooded areas, it's common to see signs that say like that they're trying to like preserve the wildlife in that area and to stay on the trail. I see that all the time when I go on hikes. So fairly normal. I spent about a month preparing for this trip, and I made sure to contact everyone I knew so they would know where I was in case I went missing. I then drove there and started my hike. Once I got there, I relished at the beauty of it all. The start of the trail had a view of many peaks staring down at you, and I thought to myself how the view looked like giant gods towering over the world. I then started on the trail. That sounds absolutely stunning. At first, everything was fine. It was your typical mountain trail. I made sure I took a break every 15 minutes or so I didn't overwork myself and have to call it quits. It was around my fifth break that things started to seem off. The birds had stopped singing, and I couldn't hear the chattering of insects. It is never a good sign when everything goes completely quiet around you out in the wilderness. That means there's a predator nearby. I didn't even hear the wind blowing through the trees. It was as if everything had vanished. Yeah, not a good sign. After about 5 minutes, I started on the hike again. I was a little nervous and on edge, though because I was the loudest thing there, it felt wrong, as though I was being watched, stared down by some malevolent force playing with me. Probably because you were. I continued until around break number 20. I stopped getting out my bottle of water, as I had done multiple times before, but as I was putting the bottle to my lips, I realized something was off. I heard twigs snapping about 10 feet behind me. I threw my water bottle down and turned around to see what I heard. Oh, I wouldn't have even looked. I would have already been like, boom, like running. I can't describe exactly what I saw. That is a bit too difficult. The creature I saw was vaguely humanoid, bipedal, with pale paste like skin. Its face, though, was certainly not. It had eyes that I can only describe as being too big to fit its face. Oof. Its face, though small, still surrounded the eyes, but I swear its eyes were too big. The creature's mouth was indescribable, but I think the closest I could use for you to picture it would be to say that it was somewhere in between a human and a dog mouth. Ew. Like, so like a human dog, like hybrid type thing. That sounds absolutely terrifying. So, with 5 layers of knife like teeth, its hands were freakishly large and about the size of my arm, with long, skinny fingers to match. Oh, God. And the rest of it, I can't really describe. It was sort of a blur, almost hard to see. And that's all I remember about its lower half. Oh my God. I stood still, staring at the thing. It hadn't noticed me yet, but it wouldn't be long before it did. This thing hasn't seen you yet, and you're still standing there staring at it. I would have been gone so fast. It was then that I started to sneeze, and then the creature really noticed me. It turned its head around, but instead of attacking me, it spoke. Agligah, it said in a deep guttural voice. I don't understand, I said, confused, startled by its speaking. It looked at me, pushed its head forward as if to say, leave. I then started to run, leaving in fear. I made sure it didn't follow, and I ran until I got to my car. I recently tried to do research, but I haven't found anything on it. But what I do know is that it spoke in Cherokee. It told me to leave. I have researched the region and have seen that many people have come up missing there. I now think about the human like sorrow in that creature's eyes, and I think I know why it wanted me to leave. Ooh, that was spooky, you guys. What do you guys think it was that she encountered? Do you think Wendigo, Skinwalker? What are you guys thinking here? Um, I don't know. For me, I would not have stuck around that long to even hear the thing speak. I would have been running so fast back to my car, like the thing wouldn't have even seen me. But that's just me. I don't like to stick around and find out when I know things are going downhill fast. But that's just me. Anyways, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. And also, if you have a scary story that you would like to share, please go ahead and email that to me. I will have the email in the description down below. I would love to hear from you guys. Until then, stay spooky.
So I really want to talk about the time that I saw a skinwalker. I tell anyone that I can about this story because it is just the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced, and it like sends chills down my spine when I think about it. But I really just like wish that I could have the answer to this whole thing. So I'm going to talk about it. So basically, this took place in Reno, Nevada in 2021. And I had just graduated high school, and it was the summer, like a day or two before the 4th of July. During this summer, me and my best friend, we would always just like at night go get food and drive up to this little viewpoint and just like eat our food in the car. We went and got like Chick-fil-A or something, and then we drove to this specific viewpoint. It's an elementary school on top of a hill. So this elementary school, it was on the edge of town, and you know, it's like all the town, suburbia, and then basically just nothing past that. Like it's just like mountains and desert in Nevada. Sometimes we would get wildlife that would like wander from the vast land into like the neighborhoods and stuff. We would get like bobcats, coyote. We also got bighorn sheep, and sometimes they would wander into the neighborhoods. That's important. Most nights, especially in the summer when we would park here, there was like a bunch of other cars with other teenagers. But on this specific night, me and my friend go up there and there were no other cars. It was just our car. So it's probably like maybe 10 o'clock or something, and we're sitting in our car, it's dark, we're eating food. We suddenly hear like fireworks, like neighborhood fireworks, like just like pop, 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 pop. And we didn't think anything of it because it was almost the 4th of July. This big truck comes up to where we were parked, and it had its brights on, and he like blocked us in. He rolls down his window and he starts yelling things at us. And we're like dumb teenage girls, I don't know. So we rolled down our window to hear him because we couldn't hear him. He's like, "You guys are shooting guns up here, like we have got kids sleeping," and yelling at us. And we were trying to be like, "Sir, like we're two like girls in this car, like we're not like shooting guns up here." And we were trying to explain that we heard the fireworks too. Like we were like, no, like those were fireworks, like don't worry, we heard them, like it wasn't us. Anyway, he's yelling at us and we're getting really creeped out and we're like, what the fuck? Eventually he's like, okay, whatever, and he drives off. And we're sitting up there, we're alone now, and we're just like, that was really weird, like that made me feel really weird, like we should go home, like it's a weird vibe now, I'm scared, and like let's just go home. We're driving down the hill, and as we come to the base of the hill, our lights shine up, and our lights shine on this bush that is like 15 or 20 feet in front of the car. And standing behind the bush is a naked man, like the body of a naked man, but the head of a bighorn sheep. And our lights shined on it. Like, our lights literally, like, right in front of us, just like clear as day. Like, we saw what we saw. It was just right in front of us. And the image is, like, burned into my brain, what it looked like. Like, I can literally close my eyes and see exactly what I saw. It was a naked man with the head of a bighorn sheep. And the moment our lights flash on it, it ducks down behind the bush. Like, it sees us and it ducks really quickly. But it was enough time that we saw what it was, and it was looking at us. And I was like, did you see that? To my friend who was driving, and she just turned to me and was like, shh, we were just both like in shock, and she was really frightened because it was like, what the fuck was that? That she just shushed me. She didn't even want to talk about it. She was like, oh my god, no. So we keep driving because we're like, we need to get home. Like, this like weird stuff is happening. We like need to go home. So we see that, the creature, and we keep driving. And then we drive past like an entrance to those neighborhoods, and the guy in the truck is sitting in his truck waiting for us. And I don't even know what he thought, but the guy in the truck is waiting for us, and as we pass by, he pulls out and starts following us. And we noticed him right away. It was his truck, and my friend is in like a low like fishbowl car, and this guy has his brights shining straight into our car. So literally our hearts are racing. We don't know what we just saw, and now this scary guy is following us, and we're freaking out. And I was like, I'm gonna call 911, like, what is going on? And so I dialed 911, and my friend was like, okay, just wait, like, let me see if I can like lose him. So we get up to this roundabout, and we go around the roundabout like twice, and then we go and exit, and he follows us still. He's following us, and we're like, he's gonna follow us like all the way home. And my house was over there, and I was like, don't drive to my house. I don't want this guy to like know where I live. So we keep driving like all through the neighborhoods, and this guy is still following us, but eventually he just stops following us. And in my mind, he probably thought that we were like some rowdy, misbehaved kids, and he was like making sure we were going home. Like, looking back, that's probably what it was, but in the moment, I didn't know that, and it was really scary. So then my friend is like, okay, like, I guess we don't need to call 911, whatever. So she drives me to my house, and we park in the parking lot, and I just had to say something. I was like, okay, like, what was that thing? But it was just weird because we were so, like, mentally just preoccupied about getting away from this creepy man in the truck that we just, like, had no time to think about whatever the fuck creature we saw. So we were just like, just don't talk about it. But then once we parked the car, it was like, okay, what the fuck was that? And my friend and I, like, we have explained what we've seen to each other, like, what it looked like, and we saw the exact same thing. So when I try to, like, explain this story to my family, they don't believe me. And I've told them this story before, and they're like, okay, like, they just don't believe me. But the thing about my friend is that she's the most realist person ever. She's not woo-woo in any capacity. She's not a liar. She's very, like, to the point about everything. And she insists that that is what we saw. And I don't know, it's like we either saw a literal, like, creature, like a skinwalker, that was the body of a man but the head of a bighorn sheep, or we saw an actual naked man running around an elementary school wearing like a hyper-realistic mask of a bighorn sheep, which might be just as creepy. I still can't drive past that neighborhood and past that elementary school without like literally getting the chills, because I'm like, I know what I saw there. Like, it is so scary. And also, in hindsight, I sometimes think that maybe like the universe or like something out there sent that man to come like scare me and my friends so that we would go home, because that creature was like stalking us. That's what it feels like to me. So yeah, Anyway, that's my paranormal story.
Did a family of shape-shifting vampires terrorize a rural North Carolina town in the Smoky Mountains a full century before Dracula was written? Let's get into it. I'm talking about the Dillsboro vampires, probably more aptly named the New Webster vampires because that's what Dillsboro was known as at the time. This happened in the 1780s. It coincides with the time that the vampire panic in New England was going on. But again, like I said, this is a full century before Dracula was ever published, ever written. And it started when a doctor, Dr. Alfort, and his family, he had a wife and a teenage son, settled into the New Webster community. Now, all was well at the beginning. There was even talk that he was a descendant of royalty, that that he was some kind of prince or something. They definitely had money. They built a mansion out in the middle of the woods there, and started his practice. He opened an office and an apothecary on the ground floor of his mansion, and they lived on the upstairs part of the mansion. All was well at first until a few months go by, and two different members of the community, two different gentlemen who only were diagnosed with gout, passed away. Now, of course, that set some tongues to wagging, and people already started rumors about the doctor, so it compelled the minister to talk about no man knows the day or the hour when his time will come. So that appeased everyone for the time being. Well, the next incident was the minister, the very minister who had held that sermon to quiet the townspeople's fears and rumors. His wife went to check on their daughter, who was a toddler at the time, and she saw a dark, menacing figure looming over her. Of course, the minister's wife screams and shouts and gets the attention of the whole household, but by the time everybody can get there, the figure has fled, and it was too late. It was too late, sadly. Well, it didn't help that about this time that there were reports in the town of a large bat-like creature that said to have a wingspan of like 10 foot and had leathery wings and would seem flying over the town or perched in the treetops and glowing eyes. Well, the next report was when a young boy came running from the remote area back into town to his grandparents' house to tell them that something was attacking his family. Well, by the time an posse was assembled, they were also lost. His siblings and his family, it was also too late for them by the time the townspeople got there. And there was no signs of or evidence of any trauma, just two small puncture holes in the necks. And they also found those two small puncture holes in the necks of the minister's daughter. So now, people are definitely on edge, and people are starting to talk, starting to point fingers. Well, the straw that broke the camel's back was the townspeople were awakened by screams coming from the nearby hills. And they were more ready this time, more alert. So they quickly assembled a posse and headed in the direction of the screams. And as they were going up the hill towards this residence, it was a young couple. They noticed a figure going down the hill toward Dr. Alfort's house. Well, they thought it was someone going to fetch the doctor to need help, so they didn't really study it at the time. They proceeded up the hill to the couple's house, and lo and behold, again, it was too late. The couple were already gone, and this definitely, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. They all went to Dr. Alfort's house, and they demanded entry. They said that he was hiding a killer inside. Well, Dr. Alfort resisted as best he could. He resisted. He did not want to let anyone in, but eventually they pushed Dr. Alfort to the side. They tied him to a nearby tree, and they proceeded to search the entire premises. Now, what's interesting is that in the living quarters on the second floor, they found that the beds were not only empty and they didn't find anyone in there, it looked like nobody had slept in them at all. The beds were neatly made, no one had slept in them. So they go back downstairs, and as they're going through the office and the apothecary, they find a door to a cellar that was heavily bolted and locked. But they managed to defeat the locks and open the door and proceed down into this dark, dank cellar. And to their surprise, they saw three coffins in there. Well, they opened two of them, and two of them were empty. They opened the third one, and it was Dr. Alfort's wife. She was in a black dress, wearing like funeral attire, basically, and she cursed and spat at them, but she was very much alive. So they're starting to get the picture here. The townspeople are starting to get hip to what's going on. So let's just say they hold a judge and jury on the site. It did not go well for Dr. Alford and his wife. The verdict was guilty, and they were dispatched, and the mansion was set ablaze. It burned. Well, they have never accounted for the teenage son. His coffin was empty, and there have been more sightings of that large bat-like creature uh, since this, but the son was never seen or heard from again. And this is a story a couple of nights ago that I almost didn't report because there's some conflicting, it's got some conflicting details in it, but this has been published in a book. It's also been published in the local papers there. Now, I heard a podcast where they went to the town and they contacted the genealogical society and whatnot, and also the property records, and they couldn't find any records of this family ever being there. But that doesn't necessarily say it's not true, because records weren't notoriously accurate back then. We're talking the 1700s, especially in real rural areas like southern Appalachia, like the Smoky Mountains, in remote areas. So it definitely could have slipped by the cracks. And this story has been covered by many reputable sources. So that's been Jay's Haunted Appalachia for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the story of the Dillsboro vampires, and keep Appalachia haunted, y'all.
Story time of one of the scariest stories of my life from back when I lived in the Appalachian Mountains. So I was about 14 when this story took place, and my parents went out on a date and my brothers were at their friends' houses, so I was alone in the house. I was already really uneasy because I just didn't like being alone, and on top of that, like, I have had like paranormal experiences in that house at this point already. So as I'm home alone, I decided that I wanted to knock out some of my chores, and one of my chores was the dishes. So I had to go to the kitchen and do the dishes and whatever. When I got there, one of the kitchen cabinets was open, and I thought that was weird, but I was just like, oh, okay, maybe one of my family members left it open. So I closed it, and then I just did the dishes. After I did the dishes, I went to my room, and I was just chilling in there for a while. After a while, I decided to go back to the kitchen to get a snack, and when I got to the kitchen, again, one of the cabinets was open. I thought that was really weird and really creepy, but then I was like, okay, I did dishes. I had to put some dishes away before I did them. So I was like, maybe I left the cabinet open. I go back to my room once again. At some point in the night, I decided that I had to go to the bathroom, but to get to the bathroom, I would have to pass the kitchen. On my way to the bathroom, I could not believe what I saw. Every cabinet in my kitchen was open. For a minute, I just stood there stunned, like unable to believe my eyes. I was really scared, and I just closed all the cabinets and tried calling my parents. They weren't answering, my brothers weren't answering, and so I didn't really know what else to do. So I just decided to go take a shower and try to calm down. I get in the bathroom, and I turn the water on, and then I go across the bathroom. The type of shower that I had one of those really old, like, shower knobs. It was really old. It was kind of rusty, honestly, and it would squeak really loud whenever you, like, turned it on or off. That detail is important because you would never hear that sound unless you physically grabbed the knob of the shower and turned it on or off. So I'm turned around, the water's running, and I have my back completely to the shower. And then I hear that sound. I hear the squeak of the shower knob slowly turning, and then the shower shuts off. I was like, did that really just happen to me? I was fucking scared. There was nobody in the bathroom with me. I was completely alone. I barely processed what had just happened. And I don't know how I did this. Like, looking back in hindsight, I really don't know how. But I just took a super fast shower. Like quick as possible. I wanted to get the hell out of there. As I'm taking a shower, I hear footsteps outside the bathroom. Now I'm thinking to myself, oh, thank God, like one of my brothers must be home or something. I get out of the shower and there's no one in the house. At this point, I'm really scared. I'm calling all of my family members. Nobody's answering. I'm freaking out really bad. I even started to think that someone might be in the house. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen, but I still had to go to my room to get dressed. On my way to my bedroom, I could see my parents' room down the hall, and their door was cracked open. What I saw in their doorway, honestly, still haunts my nightmares. I saw a tall figure standing in the crack of their door, with its hands on the door frame, smiling at me. Trigger warning for anyone who gets scared easily. I'm about to show you guys a picture of like the closest thing I could find online to what I saw. This is kind of what it looked like. After that, I got dressed as fast as possible and I ran out of the house. I got so terrified that I rode my bike to my best friend's house. And even once my family was home, I did not want to go back there. But I had to, and we continued living there for a few more years. To this day, my family does not believe what I saw, which I don't know how, because we had tons of crazy paranormal experiences in that house. If you guys like that story, comment down below some of your own, and if you want more, let me know. Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about those scary creatures from haunted history, urban legends, and those scary stories that our ancestors used to tell us as a mean to warn us about what hides in the dark. So today we're going to be talking about the mimic, and more importantly, we're going to be talking about the Appalachian mimic. Now, this spirit is told to have the ability to steal voices in order to hunt its prey, and it's tied to the land of the Appalachian Mountains. And the history of this creature also goes back more than 100 years, and it's known among various groups of people, including Irish settlers, Scottish settlers, German settlers, and it also has a lot of indigenous influence, specifically from Cherokee stories that talk about creatures such as the Wendigo, which is a terrifyingly tall, hungry creature that has amazing mimicry skills that it uses in order to entice its prey to trust it and come close. Now, many of you might know, if you are familiar with the mountains in this area, that there's a lot of rules that they tell you to follow. And mountain residents for over the past 100 years have passed down these rules of the woods. And those include, don't look at the tree line, don't whistle at night, and do not respond to a voice in the forest that is calling your name. There is an account from a 1912 Wise County incident where a man named Henry Leach heard his name being called from a creek, and he took off running to this voice that was calling his name. And his friends who were with him heard him call back one time. And all that they found when they got down there was one of his boots with his detached foot inside. The rest of him never to be found. Another story of something that tends to happen around this area is a lot of people say that, like, say it's a mom or a dad, they'll hear their child's voice yelling, "Mom," or
Mommy.
"Dad."
Daddy. but the child is not out there. Or a child might hear their parents saying, hey, hey. And the reports say that people will hear these familiar voices of their family members coming from outside. But their family members are not even in the area. So say it was your sister, and your sister's actually in California having a vacation, but you hear her voice outside the house saying, hey, come here, come outside, hello. But that's definitely not your sister. Another tale is that oftentimes people will hear the cry of a baby deep within the wilderness. And it's kind of a core instinct for a lot of people to rescue an infant. A child is the most vulnerable of all people. And so they'll go for it, and they'll actually end up way off trail into treacherous terrain. Some people never to be heard from again because they went for the rescue of this infant.
This is a kind of story that makes people believe the spiritual world is real. That night, two friends were sleeping peacefully when something seriously strange started happening. Out of nowhere, one of them began moving in her sleep, like some invisible force was controlling her body. Her arms and legs were twitching and shifting on their own, and she suddenly woke up terrified and disoriented. She looked around the room, saw nothing unusual, and convinced herself it was just a bad dream before lying back down. But not long after, the same thing happened to the other girl. Her legs slowly lifted and started jerking in a disturbing way, like she wasn't the one moving it. She woke up in panic, then eventually drifted back into an uneasy sleep, but it didn't stop there. The first girl was hit again. This time, her body made long, unnatural movements, like something was fully in control of her. She woke up, checked the room, even looked under the bed, then lay there confused, unable to explain what was happening, and then it got worse. Her entire body went stiff, her limbs stretched in ways they shouldn't, as if some powerful force had taken over completely. And the moment she fully woke up, everything suddenly stopped, leaving behind nothing but a cold, heavy silence. What do you think happened that night? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Let's read another one of your stories. My name is Emma, and I'm 21. Here's my story. I don't talk about this much, but 4 years ago, October 14, 2021, something happened to me in the Appalachian Mountains that I still don't have a real explanation for. I was 17 at the time. My family had rented a small off-grid cabin near the North Carolina-Tennessee border, not far from a less used section of the Appalachian Trail. There was no cell service, no neighbors, just woods that went on forever. That first evening, everything felt normal. Quiet, cold, the kind of quiet where you can hear leaves falling. At around 9:40 p.m., I went outside to take pictures of the stars. That's when I heard something that sounded wrong. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a person either. It sounded like someone was trying to imitate a human voice, but not quite getting it right. Like a whisper that was too slow, stretched out, drifting through the trees. And then it said my name. Not loud, not clear, just enough to make my stomach drop. I hadn't told anyone I was going outside. I froze. The woods went completely silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Oh no. Then, from somewhere deeper in the trees, it said my name again, this time closer. I went back inside and locked the door. I didn't tell my family. I knew how it would sound. That night at 2:17 a.m., I woke up because I felt like someone was standing near me. I'm sorry, that freaked me out. I could hear slow footsteps on the porch. The wood creaked like someone was shifting their weight. Then came the tapping. 3 slow taps on the window next to my bed. I stared at the curtain, too scared to move. A shadow passed across it, tall and thin, like something leaning down to look inside. Then it whispered again, my name. In the morning, I went outside. There were bare footprints in the dirt below my window, long, narrow, and too deep, like whatever made them was heavier than a person should be. They didn't lead away, they stopped right there. Later that day, we went hiking. I tried to forget about it, but about an hour into the trail, I noticed something I can't explain. Every now and then, I would hear footsteps behind me, but when I turned around, no one was there. Then I heard my mom's voice. She was walking in front of me, but I heard her calling my name from the woods to my right. I didn't answer. The voice kept calling, getting more urgent, more emotional, like it was trying to pull me off the trail. I grabbed my mom's sleeve and told her to keep walking. That night, October 15th, we left early. No one argued. But when we drove away, I looked back at the tree line and saw something standing just inside the woods. Tall, still, watching. I didn't see its face. I don't want to. I still hear my name sometimes when it's very quiet. Oh, that is so scary. That is so scary. I'm glad that you guys all left early and that you got out of there and you are safe, but I think no one will argue that this is a good case of a flesh pedestrian lurking in the woods. The classic tap, tap, tap as well. Like, this is a classic horror story, and I am so terrified that this happened to you. But thank you so much for sharing. This one really got me, and I am going to not be able to sleep tonight, so thanks. As always, if you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me, and I will get to them if I can, and I will see you in the next one.
Let me tell you the spookiest story I've heard come out of the Appalachian Mountains, and it's all documented, not just lore. This may be the haint story of all haint stories. There were tons of witnesses, and it became such a big deal that professors from Knoxville even got involved. This was a 9-year-old girl named Bertha Seibert. In 1938, in Lee County, Virginia, she experienced nightly bed shaking. The bed shook so violently that men had to stand on all four corners and try to hold it down. The little girl would just lay perfectly still while this was happening. Lots of her neighbors and relatives witnessed this. They heard noises that they said sounded like a rat gnawing on wood. Wallpaper reportedly peeled itself off of the wall. They saw a hand appear above Bertha's head. The bed sheets were said to withdraw from the touch of onlookers. Bertha was moved to a relative's house, Raymond Minor. They wanted to move her to see if it would stop and to also avoid all the townspeople coming to their house to see this. A relative of Raymond Minor actually messaged me and was like, "Hey, did you know about this story?" Bertha said that she saw something white and fuzzy that pulled her hair. All of this got so bad that she would cry when it was time to go to bed. This got national attention in the press. They rolled it down to noticeable contractions of her stomach and thigh muscles. The people that witnessed this laughed at that explanation. They said there's no way that the girl's body could have done this. This went on for about 3 months and then it stopped. This is a picture of her afterward. Bertha later got married, raised a family, and died at 57 years old in 1986 from crippling arthritis. So what do you think? Was this a haint?
When we think of vampires, we think of New Orleans. But the Appalachian vampire is the original American vampire. Now, what people don't understand is in the 1900s, there were Romanian immigrants who came to the Appalachian Mountains because it reminded them very much of the Carpathian Mountains. And they brought with them this lore of vampirism. Now, this story comes out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There was a girl named Kira. Now, Kira said that she happened to be downtown one night with her friends, and they were at this nightclub. She said, she was dancing, having a good time, when out of the corner of her eye, she spots this man standing by the bar. And she said he had this beautiful curly brown hair, and he had bright blue eyes, and she said, he was just like almost perfect looking. Well, she said, when she was dancing with her friends and she was talking with them, all she could do was focus on this guy. Eventually, she said something was compelling her to go over and talk to him. So she walks over to this guy and she goes, "Hi, I'm Kira. How are you? Where are you from?" He doesn't say anything. She keeps trying to talk to him, but he's not speaking. So she goes, "You don't really talk that much." And this guy then proceeds to grab her hands. And she said when she felt his hands, they were ice cold. And as she looked upon his eyes, she said there was this blank stare. And she said it looked like he was empty inside. And right at that moment, she has this vision of a woman screaming, and this guy is chasing her. Well, all of a sudden, she kind of snaps out of it, and she backs up a little bit and is kind of freaked out now. This guy looks at her and says, "What do you think of me?" And she says, "Well, to be honest with you, I think you're a little creepy now." And he goes, "I'm sorry. I'm still trying to learn to be human." And she said the next thing she knew, she felt something telling her to go outside. So she started to walk out the front door. She goes down the road and she goes into this back alley. This guy follows her out. She said this guy came up right next to her, and next thing she knows, she's kissing this guy. And she said it was getting very passionate when all of a sudden he starts getting very aggressive. And she said he was grabbing her arm so hard he could feel the nails going into her skin. And she said, at this point she became terrified and started freaking out when she hears her friends say, "Kira, are you all right? Is everything okay? What's going on?" She turns, she takes off running to her friends. She's all frantic. And she says, "This man I met at the bar, he was trying to attack me out in the alley." Her friends just kind of look at her like she's crazy. And she's like, "What are you, you don't believe me? There seriously was this guy." And they're like, "Kira, you were over by the bar alone. And you were talking to someone who there was no one there." and you walked out of the door alone, and you walked into the alley alone, like there was no one with you. And she's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, he was there, he's real. And her friends are like, look, you've had too much to drink. We're going to take you back home so you can get some sleep. So she said she went home, and she started to think, maybe it was me drinking too much. Like, maybe I just imagined this. Until she goes into the bathroom, and she sees these scratch marks on her arm. Now, this next story takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. There was this man named Marcus. Now, Marcus said that he grew up in sort of a bad part of Atlanta. And he said, he was in a lot of trouble and wasn't on the up and up. Well, he said this particular night, him and his group of friends, they're hanging outside of their house. They're listening to music. And he said it was probably about 11 o'clock. So that's when all of a sudden it just got eerily quiet. And he said the next thing he knows, they see this white guy walking down the block. They said just something seemed like really off with him, but also like this looked like a guy that wouldn't be in that neighborhood. So normally they would go up to him and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing in this part of town? And call him out and stuff. But they said they felt like they were in some sort of trance. And this guy makes it all the way to the driveway. He turns and he walks right up to them. And Marcus said he stopped, right next to him. And his eyes were fixated on this one guy who they called Shorty G. And they said this whole time as he stood there, he just was staring straight at Shorty G. Well, this guy walks over to Shorty G. He taps his face and he says, it's a nice night, isn't it? And he turns and he walks away. Well, after this guy leaves, Marcus and his friends are kind of like fighting amongst each other. Like, why didn't you say something? Why did you let him punk you? Like, what's going on? And this whole time, they said Shorty G is just standing there like something was bothering him, like he was terrified or he'd seen something. And he said, the rest of the night, Shorty G didn't say anything. And then finally he said, what, I'm going to go home. Like, I'm going to leave. I'll catch you later. So he walks back to his house, and the next day they're getting ready to all hang out. Shorty G doesn't show up. So they go to his grandma's house. They knock on the door, and the grandma's like, Shorty G never came home last night. I thought he was with you guys. And they're like, no, he said he was going home. For 3 days, they searched for Shorty G. They couldn't find him anywhere. And he said after about a week, they realized he was probably gone. And he said, at this time, they did not call the police. They handled things on their own because they did not want the police in the area. So he said he never heard from Shorty G again. Now, this next story takes place in West Virginia. There was this girl named Caitlin. Caitlin said that her grandmother came over from Romania. And she said she remembered this family story that when her grandmother was younger, her brother was unalived by someone, and they never were able to figure out who did it. And she said they buried him in a local cemetery. Fast forward many years later, they said, that they wanted to bring this case back up, and they found some new evidence. So when they went to bring up the body, they could not find one. And the grandmother said they never found out what happened to him. Well, fast forward now, her brother's daughter at the time, she now has a daughter. And her daughter was like 9 years old. Well, she's at home one night, and her daughter goes into the kitchen, and she said she sees this man standing next to the kitchen table. And she said he had a brown hat. He had this brown jacket on with some, 70s looking jeans. And she said the guy looked at her and said, don't you recognize me? I'm your grandfather. He turned and then walked out the back door. Well, she runs into her mother's room and she's screaming. And she starts telling her mother, like, hey, someone was in the house. There was this guy and he was in the kitchen. And her mom's like, well, what did he look like? She starts describing him, and instantly she starts crying because she goes, that was my dad. That was your grandfather that you've seen. And her grandmother always said that in her country, they believed that sometimes people would come back from the grave, and they called them vampires.
Welcome to Kim After Midnight. Tonight's story is from a fellow follower who shares his experience hiking in the Appalachia. I'd be interested to know what you would do in this situation. He said it started out normal, just him and miles of forest, no signal, no people. It was around sunset, and he had said he heard someone calling his name. Not real loud, just, enough to stop him. The weird part was that he hadn't seen a single person on the trails all day. At first, he said he thought it was another hiker messing with him, so he called back. Nothing. Then he heard it this time, closer, saying his name, the exact same way his sister would say his name. Then it hit him. His sister was states away. She was nowhere near where he was hiking. He started walking faster, trying to ignore it. But the voice, it just kept up with him, always just behind the trees, but never visible. Then it changed. It stopped, calling his name, and started copying him. Every step he took, crunch, every breath, it echoed, just slightly off. He said the moment he realized it wasn't human, everything just went silent. No wind, no bugs, nothing. And then right behind him, something whispered, "Almost got you." He ran, and he didn't stop until he reached the road. And when he finally looked back, he swore he saw something just standing there, watching him, debating on if he should continue to follow. What do you think it was that was following him? I've heard many stories about the Appalachian Mountains and things of this nature, but I'm just curious, what would you think?
So listen to me.
I got an email from a guy named Kaz who says he spent a few months living in China among monks, and he had 3 different experiences there that left him unsettled and completely creeped out, and these stories get creepier and creepier, and I'm going to try to put them all in one video. So the first story deals with liminal spaces, and he says that he's exploring a town called Inzhou, which is a city just south of where he was staying, and normally the city is very busy with cars honking and people bustling all around, and he stopped into Chinese tea shop to get a little snack. He got green tea and he got a bread roll, and when he stepped out, the sky was completely overcast and there was nobody on the streets. Very weird. He had never been to this part of China before and not seen a single soul. So he walks down the street a little bit where he knows there's a shopping plaza and he knows there will be people. But there's not. None of the shops were actually closed up and turned off completely, like they had never been opened. But he said most of the shops there have roll down doors where you can still see inside. But he's looking in, he doesn't see anybody. He comes to a shop with the door still rolled up. So he walks inside, the lights are on, he says hi loudly in Chinese, but nobody's inside. Or just looked completely abandoned, like whoever was working inside had just picked up and left. So he got creeped out and he walked outside and decided to walk back up the road to the bus stop to head back to the temple where he was staying. The walk to the bus stop was a short one, but he said during the walk he still didn't see anyone, no cars, nobody honking, nobody talking in the distance. It was just completely silent outside. So he gets back to the bus stop and he's sitting down on the bench and he's waiting for the bus, which should arrive in like 5 or 6 minutes. And as he's sitting there, he sees someone approaching. An old white guy wearing a khaki suit with long wispy hair. He was tall and thin, and he comes up to the bus stop and he sits next to Kaz. Kaz looks at him and says, "Do you speak English?" And the guy says, "I do." And he speaks English perfectly. And Kaz says, "Isn't it weird how the city is so quiet right now? Like, I've never seen it like this." And the guy just looks around like he's pondering for a second. He says, "It is strange, isn't it?" But the way that he said it just seemed a little bit off. Like something about it was just creepy. While they're waiting for the bus, they're sitting there talking, and Kaz asks him why he's there, and the guy tells him he's from Canada, and he's more or less where he wants to be, but he sort of dodges the question as to why he's actually in China. Kaz says he didn't want to be impolite, so he didn't press too much, and he tells him that he's from Portugal, and he's here visiting and studying with some monks. And as he's talking to him, the bus comes rolling down the street, and the man looks at him and says, "You better cut your bus, son." Kaz stands up to gather his things, and the bus pulls up and opens the door, and Kaz steps onto the bus, and he turns around to say goodbye, but the old man's not behind him. Suddenly, the street is filled with people, filled with traffic again. And he said, "I would have noticed had there been other people while we were having this conversation, but it was like a switch was flipped and the world turned back on." Okay, next story, the Fox Ladies. Kaz is in a particularly remote and rural area of China called Taizhou, and he's there exploring some mountains where there are temples at the top. And he's hired a local guide, and he's with some other people from the US and Canada. We're all hiking to see these temples, and they're about halfway up. It's high altitude. Everyone's exhausted and hungry. And so the guide says, "Okay, we're going to stop here and we're going to have some snacks." And Kaz had brought some rice cakes that he had purchased from a local vendor before starting the hike. And so he's sitting against this little half wall. He's enjoying his little snacks when he hears what sounds like some girls giggling. So he looks up, and across the path through these bushes, he sees these 2 women emerge. And they look maybe like early 20s, and they're wearing traditional Chinese dresses, and they have their hair in he described as Chinese ox horn hairstyles, which he also says is like 2 little buns. And so they're waving at him and giggling, and he calls to them hello in Chinese, and they call back, "Come and talk to us." He says in China it's rude to walk and eat. So he stays put and he says, "No, you come over here and talk to me." They're still giggling, kind of half in the bushes, and he notices like something about their features seems off. He can't quite put his finger on what, but he's looking at them and he's like, they don't seem completely right. Said it was so weird, but I was trying to be polite and I just told them to come talk to me. But they say, "No, come on, handsome, come up the mountain. Our house is just up the hill. Have dinner with us." And the guide hears this commotion and comes walking over, and he looks and he sees the girls in the bushes, and then he looks at Kaz and he says, "Are they bothering you?" Kaz says, no, I actually told them to come and sit with me, but they won't come from over in the bushes. They just keep yelling at me from over there. And the guide says, stay right here. And he walks over to the girls. The guide starts yelling at them, but in Chinese and with such volume and with such speed that it prevented Kaz from being able to translate everything that was said. But he said he did pick up on that the main thing was go, get out of here. Put too much of a fight up, and eventually they just leave, and he hears them crashing through the bushes on the other side of the path. And as they pick up their hike, he asks the guide, hey, what was their deal? Why were they wearing those clothes? Because he knew that them wearing those clothes would be the equivalent of someone in America wearing like a Victorian style dress. He says, what was the deal with those girls? And the guy just looks at him and shakes his head and says, those weren't girls. And Kaz is like, what do you mean they weren't girls? Like women then? And the guide says, no, they were hulajing. Explains that they're fox spirits said to take the form of young girls who seek out to marry a husband. Says, don't worry, they're only evil in certain parts of China, and this is not one of those parts. And Kaz is like, well, why were they dressed in those dresses and with their hair up like that? Wouldn't they want to appear more modern if they are fox spirits? And the guy just looks at him as if he's stupid, and he says that's how they hide their ears. And that's when it occurred to Kaz that the reason these two girls looked off was because he never registered that they had human ears. Didn't see ears at all, and that's what was off-putting about their appearance. Says when they reached the temple, he did hear what sounded like foxes screaming or women screaming outside. But on the way down from the hike, he jokingly called out, hey, where are the pretty girls at? And the guide looked at him with a sharp look, indicating not to do that. Story 3 is the weirdest, and this is the one that he wanted me to tell because he said it still haunts him and he still has no explanation, whereas the other stories he can maybe find explanations for. But he says this story took place one morning when he set out early in the morning on a long walk to go visit a nearby temple that he wanted to see. And he was using a Chinese map program that primarily took him on a route that was a raised walkway through mostly rice fields. On occasion, he did pass through a small village, but it was very rare for him to see people or any signs of life on this walk. So he's walking for a little while. He passes through another village where there's very few people, and he comes to the rice field again. And in the distance, he can see a large chain link fence that's blocking the road and stretching as far as he can see in either direction. And there's buildings behind this chain link fence. He can make out that these buildings are old houses, but they look abandoned. There's nobody that he can see. And he decides, after checking his map, there's no other roads leading to the temple where he's going. So he looks around, realizes there's no one to see him, and quickly decides to climb the fence because he's going that way anyway and will pass through soon. So he climbs the fence, and he's about 1,000 feet on the other side when he notices a man pushing a cart full of rice straw. Says this guy looks ancient, like old Chinese farmer type. And so he approaches the man, and he has his phone in his hand, and he's trying to be polite and indicating that he's just passing through. And the man looks at him and says in perfect English, you should go, you're not supposed to be here. Caught Kaz off guard because he says encountering an old Chinese farmer who spoke with perfect English with no accent whatsoever was extremely rare in China, and especially rare in this part of the country. He kind of explains himself, and he's like, I'm sorry, I'm just passing through. And he shows him his phone, and the guy completely ignores his phone. He said, it's not safe here. I told you should leave. Kaz apologizes in both English and Chinese, and he says, I'm sorry, I'm just passing through. I'll be on my way. And he starts to walk past this farmer when the farmer grabs him by the shoulder and looks at him and said, I said it's not safe here. Turn around, climb back over the fence, and go around. As I'm telling you for your safety, it's not me you have to worry about. Kaz says when he said that, that freaked him out enough to turn around and book it back in the direction of the fence. He climbed back over, and when he looked back, the guy's gone. He looked in both directions. He said there was nowhere for him to go. He would have at least heard the cart rattling around. But anyway, he walks back to the village that he had just passed through, and he ends up bumming a ride to the temple from a guy on a motorbike. And when he gets to the temple, which is only about 40 minutes away, he tells the monks about the situation. And he's like, is there like a construction site or something going on right there? Because I passed through, and it was like a super weird vibe. Head monk looks at him funny, and he says, there's no village there. There's no chain link fence. Nothing is there. Kaz describes what happened to him and the guy that he met who told him to turn around and what was the guy so afraid of. And the head monk insists that there was nothing there. And he says, you know what, I think you should leave. I'm going to have someone escort you back. The monk that is walking back with him ends up taking him down the path right through the town where Kaz had passed, where he had seen the chain link fence and the old buildings and the old farmer. This time there's no town and no fence and no farmer. And so he looks at the monk and he says, what happened here? Like, I just passed through this place. I took this same road. There's no other roads. And the guy just shakes his head and he says, no, nothing's here. End up getting back to the temple, but the whole experience was still bothering Kaz. And so before the monk leaves, he says, what happened there? I know I passed through something that wasn't there on the way back. So can you at least explain to me? And the guy just shakes his head and he says, Westerners would not understand. I don't know. I thought all of these were pretty good. Let me know your thoughts, theories. He'll be seeing the comments. Kaz is his real name. And if you have a spooky scary story time that you think nobody would believe, send it in. We'd love to hear it.
Do not watch this alone at night. I am rating these scariest paranormal experiences people have commented part 3. Froggy commented, when I was little, there was a mimic in the basement that would only show up at night as my dad. It would stare at us through the crack in my door, and it wouldn't leave if we were asleep. I stayed up all night and soon learned to lock the door every night at 6 due to the fact I slept in the basement. Its eyes were blue, and my dad's eyes are green. I rate that a 9 out of 10, and I hope you do not live there anymore. That is beyond scary. This user commented, I moved out of my parents' house 3 months ago, and I moved into a small house next door. It was pretty cheap, so I assumed it was a steal. But about 4 days into living there, I was laying in my bed and I heard my mom calling my name. But before I could realize or remember I live alone, I answered back by saying, yes, mama, but no one answered. So I called her, and she said she was out on a girls' trip with her Sunday school group. I would rate that a 50 out of 10 because mimics feed off of you interacting with them and acknowledging them. I know you truly thought that was your mom in the moment, but I really hope that this interaction did not feed into that mimic. Lily commented, I was sleeping in my room with my door locked and all the lights off. I was dreaming about my dead grandma, and then I woke up in the middle of the night to the feeling of someone or something grabbing my hip. I would hope that was your grandma saying, hey, I'm here, but I really don't think so. That is kind of creepy. So I would give that an 8 out of 10. This user commented, I had been knocked over sleeping sideways in a reclining chair. Tired of whatever it was, I went upstairs to sleep in my bed. I heard a noise on the stairs and then something scratched 3 claw marks on my left outer thigh. It was deep under my skin, top skin unbroken, and took several days to come to the surface. I've never heard of anyone being scratched on the inside of their body. This is very interesting. I've never heard of anyone being scratched on the inside of their body either. I would love to see a photo if you have any. I would rate this a 7 out of 10. Izzy commented, I played in a Ouija board and I didn't say goodbye, and every night I hear a man walking in my house and it scares me to this day. I would rate that a 12 out of 10. I hope one day you're able to get rid of that spirit. If anyone has any advice in the comment section, please let it be known. Missy commented, I was 10 years old and my whole family and I went to my grandma's old house she grew up in. Both grandmothers and I were picking apples out of the yard. I look up and see a little girl in the bedroom window smiling at me. I would rate that a 7 out of 10. It is very eerie and it's sending shivers down my spine right now, just the thought of a little ghost girl staring at me through a window. Alice commented, my mom has told me this recently, but in our old house we had bunk beds, and every night after she put us to sleep, she would hear something that sounded like people jumping off of our bunk beds. When she went upstairs, we were dead asleep. Turns out a kid died in that house before we moved there. I would rate that an 8 out of 10. That is super sad to find out what had happened in that house, but I would hope that's just residual energy. That is all for part 3. I do apologize for not posting for an entire month. I was moving, and moving with a toddler is very time consuming, so don't worry, I'll be posting a lot more this month.